Hey everybody, how are we? So dealing with a little slight malfunction in the chat here. I think somebody either Tom accidentally yeah Tom accidentally blocked some random geek, so now he can't see some random geek. But I think Tom, you have to unblock him from your side. I don't know. I don't think I can do anything about that. It's nice to be involved in a blocking dispute that I didn't actually block somebody. It's great. Anyway, hi everybody. Hi to everybody in the chat. Hi to everybody watching. Thank you for joining me. Um, and we're going to get started as usual with patron questions. And I know some of my patrons are in the chat, and some others are either watching now or will be watching later. So, as always, we go to the pre submitted questions. So, everybody who is joining me live, you can either pay attention to what I'm saying or you can chat amongst yourselves. Uh, Either way, I'm going to answer some pre submitted questions. And then I'll get back to the live chat in a few minutes. So, I just saw a question from Patrick Stump. So, who do I think is going to win the Stanley Cup this year? Ha ha ha! I have no idea. I don't. I did. I watched hockey. Actually, I watched hockey during the Winter Olympics this year, and I thought it was awesome. It was like one of my favorite events. I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. Men's and women's hockey, I thought was fantastic. In fact, I think I liked the women's hockey even better. It was just incredibly exciting. But I have not watched a single NHL game. I don't know if I've watched an NHL game since I was a teenager, so I have no idea. So you're quite correct to sarcastically say that I am knowledgeable about the subject, because I totally am not. Now, questions from patrons. The first is from that block machine Tom McDonald, who says, if a train is traveling east at 45 miles an hour, if a train traveling east at 45 miles an hour is 425 miles from a train on the same track traveling at 50 miles an hour heading west, how long before you move to Canada if the Democrats don't take the House on November 6th? If you don't want to move to Canada if American democracy is lost, to what other country would you move instead? Oh, Canada's my number one pick, I have to say. Canada's my number one pick because it is, in terms of language and culture, it's and language, culture, and geographical proximity, it ticks all the boxes. It would be the easiest. It's the closest to the United States in all of those areas. So I would want to go to Canada. I would probably want to go to Western Canada. I've never been to Canada, to any part of it, but my understanding is that the weather in Western Canada and Southwestern Canada, which would be like the Pacific Northwest for us in the United States, is probably the most hospitable, would be the most agreeable to my disposition, to my constitution. I don't, honestly, there are days in the last 2 years where I have thought, and I've said to Ashleigh as well, and I've been completely serious, that if money were no object, I may have gone already. And I never thought I would say that. And there are times when I say that, and then there are other times when I think back on it, and I'm embarrassed to have thought that or said that, because I think, no, I can't possibly leave. Like, how could I leave? I have to stay, and I have to try and I have to vote, and I have to protest, and I have to try and make things better. I can't just leave. But then there are days where I'm like, oh, like if I could go, I would go. I would get the hell out of here. And I know things aren't perfect in Canada. All of my Canadian viewers who are about to pipe up and say, wait a minute, because I know if things aren't perfect in Canada, things aren't perfect anywhere. But I feel like it would be a step up. It would not be paradise, but it would be an improvement. Yeah, there are times when and the same thing for Australia. And again, I know things in Australia are certainly not ideal and are certainly not perfect, politically, socially, in many ways. But yeah, if money were no object, there are a couple of places on my list where I might have said, you know what, let's just move. Let's just start over. I can make YouTube videos from anywhere. Let's just go. So yeah, I don't know. I probably won't be going anywhere anytime soon, regardless of the results of the election, if for no other reason than I can't afford it. And my guilty conscience will keep me here and want me to stay and try to, participate in making things better in what meager fashion I can. But yeah, I've thought about it. I have thought about it. I have to say that. Next question is from Chris Sanders. Have you ever seen Blake's 7? If so, what's your opinion on its lack of availability for purchase stateside? This is going to be a real quick answer. I've never seen Blake's 7. In fact, I kind of forget what it even is. I looked it up last year for some reason, I think, and I remember very, very faintly that Blake 7 is a show that existed, but I've never seen any of it. I have no opinion on its lack of availability stateside. If it's a great show and it's not available here, that's a shame, just in general. But no, I can't speak specifically because I've never watched it. So sorry. Next question is from Dr. Babylon. Steve, I have my own theory on why the Prime Directive exists. A recurring theme of Western history and human history in general has been technologically advanced civilizations invading, oppressing, and exploiting less advanced ones under the guise that they are bringing civilization, progress, and justice to savages who were living without it. The British, for instance, saw themselves as taking up the white man's burden, and saw the indigenous people as half animal and half child in need of paternalistic white people to discipline and educate them and bring them out of their infancy. This is one reason I dislike the Vulcan people guiding the development of Earth. I think in universe, the Prime Directive is an attempt by the humanity of the future to break that cycle of imperialism. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah, I think that's a good take. And as I think I said in one of my videos, generally speaking, I think the Prime Directive is a good rule. You know, my objection to the Prime Directive is that it's used to justify inaction in the face of natural disasters or civilization destroying events, and that, in my opinion, it's inconsistently applied. And specifically in that the Federation takes a very strong moral and legal stance against meddling in the affairs of civilizations that exist outside the Federation, but apparently is completely fine meddling in the civilizations of races of species that are members of the Federation. Which I like, and that was the whole premise of the Maquis. You know, the Maquis became rebels because the Federation came to their houses and said, hey, we had a negotiation with the Cardassians and we gave your planets away. Sorry. Well, the Prime Directive doesn't protect them. And they're Federation citizens. And they're being told, you gotta move. We gave your planets away. Sorry. You know, so if the principle is non-interference and people have the right to govern themselves and you know, the autonomy of a community or the autonomy of a civilization to govern itself without outside interference should be a principle, then the principle should apply to worlds that are Federation members as well as non-Federation members. But generally speaking, it's a fine rule. And I think, yes, the connection to imperialism, to colonialism, to the interference, both in you know, hundreds of years ago during the imperial and colonial and the sort of the age of exploration, and also right on up to today, where we see, for instance, the United States inserting itself into what are usually internal affairs of other countries, and usually to serve our own narrow interests, not to do what's best for the people of that country, assuming we could even decide that, but doing what's best for us. I agree. The Prime Directive is a great rule to try and push against that and say, actually, that's not our job. We shouldn't be doing that. So in general, I think it's a good rule. And I think the way you describe why it would be a good rule are good reasons. Just, you know, include my objections to it, as I just said. Question from John Brockman: what's your favorite film out of the Weimar Republic after Caligari? Also, how many years should each member of the Trump family and administration spend in prison? Well, to answer the second question first, they should all go to prison for the rest of their lives. Or maybe, how about this? We should put them in one of the concentration camps that they want to build for immigrants and just leave them there. You know, make sure that they're fed and watered and treated humanely, but just leave them there for the rest of their lives. Let them die in one of those fucking camps, because fuck them. As for my favorite Weimar Republic film, and that would be the German cinema of the late teens and 20s. Actually, Caligari is not my favorite. I know a lot of people assume like, well, there's the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and then there's everything else. And it is an amazing film and a striking film and an incredibly influential film, and for good reason. But my favorite is not Caligari. There are a couple of films from Germany from that era that I personally would rank ahead of Dr. Caligari. And one of them is a wonderful film by F.W. Murnau called, in its English title is The Last Laugh. Its German title is actually Der letzte Mann, which translates literally as The Last Man. And it's a beautiful movie. It's one of the first films to feature what they call the unchained camera technique, where the camera is not locked down on a tripod, where the camera is able to swoop and glide and use tracking shots and crane shots. And cinematography on the film is just breathtaking. It's one of the most beautiful films, silent or talkie, ever made, and wonderful performances. It's a silent film that has almost no title cards. It's told totally visually, except for a couple of titles at the very beginning and the very end that are just there for explanatory purposes. And I think there might be one or two shots of text that, like on a newspaper or something, that a character is reading. That in the English version is English text, but in the German version would be German text. But other than that, it's told completely visually, and it's one of my favorite films. And I would put that at the top of my list of films from the Weimar Republic. And also, I mean, there's Metropolis, there's Nosferatu, and then F.W. Murnau came to America and made one of his greatest films, which was Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, which doesn't count, I suppose, as a Weimar film, but still is from that era, and from one of the great filmmakers of that era. So, but yeah, my favorite Weimar Republic era film would be The Last Laugh. Here's one from Dave Edwards. Jim Jeffries made a semi-joking comment that we vote in the most entertaining president. I think he has a real point. Looking back at the past several presidents, this certainly seems to be the case. Even the demos, Kennedy, Carter, Clinton, and Obama, were the more entertaining choice. In this day of YouTube, cats, and reality TV, I can certainly see that a clownish buffoon would be elected over a soft-spoken, thoughtful intellectual. Sad but true. Has our mindless media culture really made it all come down to entertainment value? I think you're right. I think that's probably a little too reductive, a little too simplistic. But in general, I think it's as you say, Dave, and I think it's also the fact that a lot of people, regardless of their political persuasion, and they treat politics as something that just doesn't matter, that doesn't have any real effect on their lives. They segregate it into its own thing, and that's why people say, like, well, just don't talk politics. When you're with somebody, just don't talk politics. Or when they say, oh, I can't imagine people falling out with friends or family over politics, as though it doesn't matter. And if someone feels that way, it's probably because politics, as they think of it, doesn't really affect their lives. And they either aren't aware, or they haven't really internalized it, or they just don't care about the fact that it does affect the lives of other people. So having that detachment and having that attitude about the political process, where you say to yourself, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter who's the president. It doesn't really matter who controls Congress, or who the governor of my state is, or who controls my state legislature or my town council or whatever. That stuff doesn't matter. It's not really important. That is what allows people to vote for someone like Trump, or to vote for anyone on the basis of such a superficial thing, to say, well, I'll vote for, I think it would be more interesting if this person was president, so I'll vote for them, regardless of whether they do a good job or a horrible job. You say, well, I think I'm going to vote for that person because that would be the most interesting choice, right? That's not only is that an incredibly superficial way to choose, I think it testifies to the privilege of the person making that choice. Because you have to have a certain level of privilege if you can say honestly that you don't think politics matter, or you don't think politics are important, or you can't understand why people might be seriously upset or pissed off because someone that they're close to supported a political candidate that wants to hurt them, that wants to use the state to disenfranchise and to oppress them. So yeah, I think it's what you say, that there is we've made everything into entertainment. That is an issue, and the news has become part of entertainment. News divisions are supposed to be profitable and are programmed and are thought of by networks as just another part of the show, as opposed to, you know, a something that is done for a public service. You know, they have to get ratings, they have to make profits, they have to make money. The news division has to be profitable now. That's a big part of it, that everything becomes entertainment. But it's also this entitled, privileged attitude that allows people to be detached from politics and detached from the consequences of their political decisions, if they even deign to make them, if they even lower themselves to participating in the political process. They say, well, let's not fight about politics, it's not that important. So I think it's that too. I think that plays a role. Next question is from Jay Miller. Again, a quick question with an easy answer. It's been enough time. Did you ever watch Jessica Jones? I think you're talking about season 2 of Jessica Jones, because I did watch season 1 and around the time when it came out, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was genius. I loved it. I have not watched season 2 yet. It has been enough time, you're correct, but I just haven't gotten around to seeing it. I also haven't yet watched the new season of Daredevil. So ask me about that in a few months. And also, if Leto Anor is there, I don't know if she's here, if she's in the chat or not. I haven't checked. But Leto, if you're seeing this or you're watching, I haven't watched Legion yet either. So I'm sorry. I beg your forgiveness. I haven't watched Legion yet either. And I haven't seen Wonder Woman yet. So there. I'll just get it all out. There's all of these shows and movies that I should have seen that I haven't watched yet. So there. Next question is from Andrew Hawkins. As a follow-up to last week, what do you think we should do about the Citizens United decision? A constitutional amendment? Court packing? There's a group called Represent Us that's trying to get anti-corruption statutes passed on a state-by-state level, but that takes time. I agree that impeachment should remain on the table for Kavanaugh, Thomas, and probably Gorsuch. No one at that high of a position has ever been convicted in an impeachment trial, but if the possibility of it were high enough, they would probably just resign, as Nixon did. On a more serious note, what do you think it is that animates Mitch McConnell's putrid corpse? Koch Industries has developed nanobots? An alien mycelium? Oh, those are good possibilities. You know, leading up to Halloween, a few days ago, we watched the original Night of the Living Dead again, and so I will go with radiation from Venus. I think that's probably it in the case of Mitch. As far as Citizens United, impeaching the Trump appointees of the Supreme Court, I think is a good idea, just because I think once Trump is removed from office, whether it's by losing his re-election bid or whether it's by impeachment or some other means or forced resignation, I think his appointment should all be purged. I think he should be treated as an illegitimate president. I don't think he should be allowed to keep a lifetime Supreme Court appointment. I think Gorsuch and Kavanaugh should both be removed on that basis, and Kavanaugh should be removed on the basis of his own offenses as well. But that's probably not going to happen, as you say. So yeah, I think a legislative solution is something that we should push for, especially if the blue wave comes in and the Democrats take control of the House and possibly the Senate. I think that's something we need to really push for. We need to fix this. You know, everybody says, especially like liberal politicians, they love to say, we got to get the money out of politics. Okay, well, if you guys get the keys, then we're gonna push you to do that. And yeah, if that means passing a law, if that means passing a constitutional amendment to say that's it, we need to push for that, and then we need to push the states to ratify it. I think that's a great idea. It's, you know, there aren't any easy fixes. There aren't any likely solutions, because impeachment is going to take a long time. Getting Congress to pass a constitutional amendment is going to be tough. Even if the Democrats are in control, it's going to be tough to find enough of them who have the guts to do it, because even though I think they should totally be in charge and I want everybody to vote for Democrats, let's not forget that once you get them in, you have to be on them. You have to look after them. You know, you can't just trust them and say, oh, okay, now you go do what's best. Like they're political animals, and many of them are not as brave or as visionary as we might wish them to be. So you have to constantly be shoving them in the right direction. So that's going to take a while. And then even if it passes Congress, it still has to be ratified by the states. So that's going to take a while too. So it even under the best of circumstances, we're looking at years and years and years and years of work to get rid of Citizens United and to restore some measure of sense to our political system as far as campaign financing goes. So, but yeah, I think a legislative solution is something that we need to start on immediately. Yeah, and if that takes the form of a constitutional amendment, then yeah, let's do it. Let's get started. Next is a question from the Bourgeois Bohemian. Contemplating further on your video, actually, Star Trek has always been preachy, you hit upon the negativity of a small yet vocal section of the Star Trek fan base. My own personal interactions in the world of social media regarding TOS Trek fandom underline to me an intolerance for any Trek after it. Like you pointed out, nothing new for Trek. These online groups, not limited to Trek, but also Marvel, Star Wars, and Doctor Who, to name a few, have an intolerance to anything new, by citing canon or timeline or continuity as a reason for what I believe is thinly veiled bigotry. The growing intolerance seen in the real world has spread to online fandom like the Borg. Sites and channels exist now not to critique, but to complain about how crappy something is or has become. Personally, I avoid these sites and channels because I am looking to indulge my nerdiness, not weaponize it. Having said all of that, the term canon is bandied about recklessly when fans need a basis to justify their objections with what I cannot help but feel is essentially coded prejudice, akin to the Black Mirror episode USS Callister, the archetype of the white male who participates in online prejudiced bullying due to real-life ostracism. Is the term canon now a euphemism for the bias of online white male intolerance? Additionally, knowing that not all fandom can possibly be using canon in such a sinister fashion, do you think the insistence on canon ultimately hurts storytelling? It depends on how it's used. When it's used in the way you're describing in your question, I think, yes, it definitely does. And I think there is, so I don't know if I would be comfortable saying that everyone who is a canon hawk is doing so to cover white supremacy or to cover bigotry, but I think intolerance of the new and intolerance of a particular race or a particular gender or a particular culture, I think those things are a lot more closely tied than we might feel comfortable admitting to, at least to ourselves. I think you're right. I think there is a sense that when you sort of imprint on something, that becomes the way it's supposed to be. And so, as I said in that Star Trek video, if your first Star Trek, if whatever it was that made you a fan was the original series or Next Generation or Voyager or Deep Space Nine or whatever, and that becomes your concept of what Star Trek is and what Star Trek is supposed to be, then some people will have a reactionary sort of intolerance to anything that comes after. I think that is a fair characterization of a lot of the reaction to Star Trek Discovery and to the J.J. Abrams films, the Kelvinverse films. And that's not to say everybody, because there are fans who dislike those for different reasons and who have legitimate reasons that I disagree with, that I don't find compelling, but they have legitimate reasons for not liking those things, and that's completely fine. You know, there are fans of the original series who didn't like Next Generation, not because they were intolerant, curmudgeonly assholes, but just there's something about it that just didn't appeal to their taste, and that's fine. You know, same thing with Voyager, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise, the movies, the new movies, whatever. You're allowed to not like something. It doesn't mean you're automatically a bigot or a racist or an intolerant old person who can't accept anything new or whatever. But there is definitely a group in the fan base and in the fan bases of a lot of other things that is like that just reacts negatively, instinctively to anything new or anything different or anything outside of their definition of what the thing is supposed to be. And when people deploy the concept of canon to defend that, I think it's incredibly destructive to storytelling. Because here's the thing, canon is whatever the people in charge of the thing say it is. Fans don't decide canon. At least not officially. I mean, we can decide canon for ourselves. We can have our own private canon, and that's fine. But nobody else is bound to respect it. Whereas if the creators of Star Trek say this is canon, then it's canon. You don't have to like it, but that's just the way it is. And that, I was reading something the other day. I was reading the production blog of Axanar, and I'm not a huge fan of the Axanar production company. But I thought what they were doing looked really interesting, and I'm kind of sad that they don't get to make it now. But I'm not a huge fan of theirs, as I am a fan of, say, the group that did Star Trek Continues. But I was reading an article on the blog. I think it was written by Alec Peters, the guy who's in charge of it, and he was talking about how you can say that you can say that Star Trek Discovery is canon because that's how canon works, but they shouldn't say they shouldn't try to say that it's Prime timeline, because obviously it's not. Except, yeah, it is, because that's what they say it is. I mean, that's the way that works. It's canon that Star Trek Discovery takes place in the Prime timeline, because that's what the people who created it say that it is. It doesn't matter that it looks different. It doesn't matter that you don't think they should be able to do a visual reboot or a visual retcon and still be in the Prime timeline. Your opinion as a fan doesn't matter. You're allowed to have it, and you're allowed to not like the show on that basis. But if the people who create the show, no matter what it looks like, and no matter how it contradicts previously established things, if they say this is Prime timeline and this is canon now, then that's it, right? If DC Comics writes a story that says actually Superman isn't from Krypton anymore, he's from Mars, I might think that's silly. I might not like that. That might cut against my whole thing, where I'm like, wait, but everybody knows Superman is from Krypton. But if they change their minds, if the people who are in charge of that character say, actually, no, he's from Mars now, then he's from Mars now. That's just the way it is. And so when people refer to the canon of a fictional thing as though it's a fact, they're missing the entire point. And yet it is extremely destructive to storytelling because it's restrictive. And I think I've spent way too much time answering that question. Here's another question that it's going to take a while to read, let alone to answer. By the way, John, I did truncate this quite a bit. John Burnsy wrote me a really long question, and I had to edit it down quite brutally just for it to be a reasonable length for me to even read, let alone respond to. So here is the edited version of John's question. John Burnsy, who says, Steve, I love a good debate. I think I got that from my dad. Doesn't matter the topic or heck, even the side. Vibrant debate is always good. Trump hasn't started any wars, has he? I understand that his comments of non-love, hate is such a strong word, and his responses to incidents by the public have not made him appear particularly wise. If he never wanted the job in the first place and no one expected him to win, is it possible that he doesn't trust anyone's instincts but his own? And he's a deal maker for himself, and if others get hurt, well... But I hope you understand he's the president, and how he acts is probably far closer to who he always has been. I know add in Brexit and climate change in the future can be very uncertain, but the core of my question is, if the GOP retains either the Senate or the House and impeachment is a no-go, you'd still see hope in the future, right? So I'm just putting this out. Blue Senate, Blue House, both? But if not, then what? Sorry about the meandering, but that was a lot to cover. Well, I think you're being way too charitable to Trump. That's the first thing. I have my natural instinct is to not be charitable to him at all, because I don't have any good for him whatsoever. Rather, this is apple cider for people wondering what I'm drinking. So I think you're being way too nice to Trump. I think Trump is a piece of garbage, and I can't think of anything that could happen to them that could happen to him that would make me say, oh, that was too bad that happened to Trump. I think he's awful, and I have nothing but contempt for him. So no, I'm not interested in trying to see things from his side or trying to understand him or trying to sympathize with him. But as far as, do I still see hope in the future if the blue wave doesn't happen? Yes. Not for the immediate future, but ultimately, yes. I think that I think I almost have to. It will not cause me to lose all hope, and it will not cause me to stop advocating for things I believe in or pushing for things that I think need to happen. But will I see any hope for things to get better in the next 2, 4, 6 years? No. No. But after that, after Trump is gone, maybe after another election or two has come along, if people by then have finally wised up and shown up to the polls in large enough numbers to overcome Republican voter suppression and to elect leaders and representatives who will try to fix this, and then held their feet to the fire and made sure that they do actually fix it, then yeah, I have hope that things will eventually improve and will eventually get better. I don't think it will be the end of history. It might be, but I don't think it will be. I don't think that Trump will be our last president. I make that joke. I made that joke to Ashleigh last week. I said, who would have thought that Barack Obama would be our first black president and our second to last president? I don't really believe that. So no, it won't. I will still have hope for the future in the long term. I won't have much hope for the future in the short term because I think it would be disastrous. I think the Democrats will probably take the House. I'm less optimistic about the Senate, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And I'm hoping for the best. And I'm going to go vote on Tuesday and do my part to make that happen. I'm afraid of the worst. I'm also afraid that my state is going to reelect our Republican governor, even though we have an incredible Democratic candidate in Ben Jealous, who I can't imagine any Democrat in this state passing up to go vote for fucking Larry Hogan. But a lot of Maryland Democrats are apparently planning to vote for fucking Larry Hogan because Maryland Democrats, Maryland centrist and moderate Democrats are the fucking worst, and they will be the death of us all. So I'm not looking forward to that, but I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm going to go vote for Ben Jealous and vote for every Democrat in sight and do my part to make it happen. But if it doesn't happen, yes, it will be a blow. It will suck. I think it will be deflating to a lot of people. But I will not give up. I will not lose hope. If for no other reason, then I look at someone like John Lewis, who has been fighting an uphill battle for civil rights for black folks and for all kinds of marginalized, oppressed, mistreated people in this country for almost his entire life. And he's still going. And he's probably going to fight that fight until he dies, which hopefully will not be for a while. But he's getting up there, and he's still showing up every day and fighting that fight. And if John Lewis hasn't given up, despite all the years he's put in, despite how exhausted I'm sure he must feel sometimes, despite all the opposition he has faced, and all of the setbacks he has faced, if John Lewis is still showing up and fighting the good fight, what possible excuse do I have for losing hope and for saying that's it? Which ties into the question about why haven't I moved to Canada yet? Because that's how I feel whenever I think about that. I think, God, I should just move to fucking Canada. Let's just go. Let's get the cat. Let's pack our shit. Let's go. I think that, and then I think, what excuse do I have in the position I'm in? I'm still in a relatively privileged, comfortable position. What excuse do I have for giving up? So no, I will not give up. But will I have hope for the immediate future? No. There'll be too much work to be done if there is no blue wave. There'll be too much work to say, things will probably get better in the next couple of years, because I don't think they will. We have to keep fighting so that they will get better eventually. It's not an excuse. It's not a reason to give up. But will I lose hope for the immediate future? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's one from Paul Andrews. I was thinking about the question on passion in Ask Away number 20. I agree with everything discussed about UBI, Medicare for all, food and shelter guarantees, but I think that the prevailing idea of an honest day's pay for an honest day's work may be outdated and needs to change. The economy is getting more automated and continues to grow, so why shouldn't everyone reap the rewards regardless of the work they do, or if they can't work at all? Hell, maybe go further. What if someone just doesn't want to work? Do you think that kind of sea change is even possible or even desirable within our lifetime or our kids' lifetime? Have I read too much Ian M. Banks? It's a really interesting question, and I think it's important because I think one of the really important sort of realizations that is dawning on a lot of people not enough yet to make a political majority, but a lot of people, especially a lot of young people, is the idea that it's wrong to tie a happy life to your ability to work and make money. That being able to live, because we only live once, we have one life, and we're born into this world, and we're not consulted about it beforehand, and we have no control over the circumstances of our birth. And given that fact, that inescapable fact that applies to everyone, it is wrong to maintain a society where people can only live with a measure of comfort and peace and satisfaction if they, A, are able to work, and B, catch enough lucky breaks, or are benefiting from enough advantages that they can work their way up to a certain level. That it's something you have to earn. That having a basic good life is something that you have to earn. I think that's an idea that a lot of people are pushing back against. That just seems wrong. It seems wrong to say you can only have a basically good life if you do this, 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 and this. That especially in a nation as rich as this one, as full of resources, as full of money, as full of people as this nation, the United States, is, that it is wrong and terrible to not say, you know what, everybody will just establish a baseline of a good, healthy life that everybody gets just for being here. And then you build on top of that, just so we establish the baseline. And that's sort of like what I was saying last time about universal basic income. Let's put in a floor so that everybody at least has their basic needs taken care of. And then you can build on top of that. And then based on luck, based on connections, based on where you were born, based on the circumstances of your birth, based on whatever privileges you may have, based on your own industry and initiative and genius, etc., etc. You can build on top of that, but everybody gets a basic level to start with that is not crushing poverty, that is not a situation where healthcare problems are going to ruin you, that is not starting in a hole that you then have to spend your whole life digging your way out of. Right? Start at a reasonable place and then let people build on top of that. I think that is a very compassionate and very sensible idea. Again, especially in a country as rich as this one. There's no reason why we shouldn't do that. And, the idea of, an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. Okay, I have no problem with that. But let's not start people off in a hole. Let's start people off on a humane, fair, even level where even the people at the very bottom are okay. And then let's say, and an honest day's pays for an honest day's work. I very much am a believer in we should untether having a baseline, decent, happy life from how much you can find a way to get paid. Next question is from some random geek who I believe asked the question that spawned that last question last week. Some random geek says, "Oh, it is time for another Ask Away." Okay, I think I will give some not so heavy questions this time around. Writing. I want some general advice on writing. How does a writer see the world? How do you as a writer see the world, if there is a difference? What music do you listen to as you are writing? Do you have some routines or rituals to get you in the groove for writing? How do you push through writer's block? How often do you go through your writings? Or how many passes do you like for your YouTube scripts before you say that is good or good enough? Did your college experience and your degree as an English major help with your writing? I haven't been to a college course, so I'm wondering if it is worth it for me to go. What could be a question in and of itself, which could be a question in and of itself as is, would college be worth it for me? What could I get out of the college experience I couldn't get anywhere else? Well, I think that is enough questions for now. P.S. Our friend YouTuber Electric Mayhem 87, Ashleigh, is still in a tough spot and has set up a GoFundMe page in order to get on her feet and in her own place. $10 or $5 can go a long way to help. Sharing around the GoFundMe page would help as well. It would be great if the generous members of your audience could help. I agree, and actually, generous members of my audience, I put the link to the GoFundMe that some random geek is referring to there for Ashleigh in the description of this video. It's the first thing. in the description. It's before all of my usual shit. It's right at the top in the description section of the video. So if you can afford the $5, the $10, the whatever yourself, or you just want to click the link and then share the page yourself to get other people to check it out, the link is in the description to help out our friend Electric Mayhem, aka Ashleigh, who is a terrific person and a terrific YouTuber and definitely could use a hand. So please consider helping out if you possibly can. As for the writer stuff, it's different with everybody. I know for me as a writer, I do tend, the thing that I think makes me different than maybe someone who isn't a writer is that I am constantly saving things for pieces. If someone says something or something happens to me or I say something or I think something or I see something on TV or I overhear a conversation, or I'm constantly collecting things and saving them so that I can use them in something. And the thing I use them in most often these days is a Steve and Stuffy video, because that is the main creative outlet that I have. That's the main creative writing that I do. But I've also done that for Star Trek videos. I might get an idea for something that can be a joke or a comedy bit in a Trek Actually video, or a comedy bit in another video that I'm doing of another series. But I'm constantly saving things, which is something that I think a non-writer probably wouldn't do. So that's one thing. As far as ritual and routine, I mean, I have a routine that's tied to my production schedule with YouTube. So for me personally, I have writing days and I have shooting and editing days that are determined by the schedule that I have imposed on myself. So that's the routine. You know, I know that Monday I'm writing and probably shooting Wednesday's video. Tuesday I'm editing Wednesday's video. Wednesday I'm writing and shooting Friday's video. Friday, Saturday, Sunday I'm working on Monday's video. You know, so that's the routine that I'm in. And writer's block, the only thing to do with writer's block is to write through it. And that's I hate for people to tell me that. Other writers hate to be told that. It's the worst advice you can ever give somebody, to say, well, if you have writer's block, you just have to write through it. But that's the truth. That's what you have to do. That there's no cure for it other than, and the thing is, and a lot of young writers or people who are just starting to write, this can be the most disillusioning part of it, because it's easy to romanticize the creative process. It's easy to look at it and say, oh, it's this wonderful creative act. And you just sit down with your pencil and paper or your keyboard and you just create. And you imagine it and it flows through your fingers and there it is, you're writing, right? Sometimes it's like that. I won't lie. Sometimes it feels like it's just traveling through you. You're just a vessel for something else. It really genuinely does feel that way sometimes. But a lot of times it feels like work. And you have to write. And it's work. You have to make it happen. You have to put those words on the page. And it's not fun. It's agony sometimes. It can get incredibly boring and frustrating, and you have to force yourself to do it. But if it's important to you, or if it's your job, that's what you have to do. You know, so sort of de-romanticizing it in your mind can help. Getting ready for the fact that, you know, sometimes it's going to feel exactly like work. It's going to be work. It's not going to be, oh, the wonderful creative act. You know, it's going to be work. And sometimes it's going to suck. But hopefully the end result is something that you can be proud of and something that you will be glad you have done. So that's an important thing. And as for how many drafts, usually with my YouTube stuff, I usually only have the luxury of doing one draft and then a quick read through and a rewrite. I don't have time to do multiple drafts of everything, and I think sometimes it shows in the quality of the work, unfortunately. But yeah, I like for the Steve and Stuffy videos, for example, which are written like screenplays. I write them like screenplays. It's one draft, straight through, start to finish, and then I go back to the beginning and I read through it, and I add things I forgot to put in, or I take things out that I think don't need to be there, and then that's basically it. So it's one draft and a rewrite. That's how I do it. And again, that's because of the schedule, because I just don't have time for any more. If I had unlimited time, then I would probably take an extra couple of days with the writing to make sure it was as good as it could possibly be, and then shoot and edit, etc., etc. But just because of the production schedule, it's write a draft, read it, and revise and rewrite, and then shoot. So yeah, hope that helps. And college. Yes, I think college really did help me. College helped me out. Writing classes in college helped me out tremendously, especially the screenwriting courses that I took, the creative writing courses that I took, because they force you to write. You have to write. And then other people read your writing, and you read other people's writing, and you get used to that. You get used to having your work criticized and constructively criticizing other people's work, and that's very important and very helpful. So yes, college helped me, and then also if you go for an English course, you're also reading a lot. And reading is incredibly important and helpful to become a better writer. You're reading a lot. You're reading a lot of stuff that maybe you wouldn't have read on your own, that you would not have chosen to read, but nonetheless you're reading it and you're learning from it and you're taking things from it, and your mind is being opened to new things that you wouldn't have discovered otherwise. So I think for me, college was very important and was very good. If you can't go to college, if you can't afford it or you don't have time or whatever, if it's for whatever reason it's just not a realistic option for you, I would recommend finding a writer's group, and it can be an online writers group, or it can be a real life group that meets, once a month at a library or something. These things exist. I don't know if they exist in your area, but you should find something like that where you read and you write and you share each other's work. I think that's very healthy and very important. So yes, I would recommend that. Especially if you're just starting to write, if you're just getting into it and you want to sort of get up on your feet. I think either a writing class, whether it's college or more like an informal thing, or a writer's group, is a very good idea. Okay, next from Radical Bacon. Let's say a genuine socialist runs for president as a socialist. They win at least one state. What color will that state be on the map? It can't be red. Also, would the Dems change their platform as a result? While I'm thinking about it, what do you think of ranked choice or instant runoff voting? Trump would be forever at the bottom of my list. Oh, mine too. I think instant runoff voting is a great idea, and it is one of a couple of things that I think we could implement immediately that would significantly improve our political process. There are lots of problems with our political process in the United States that cannot be solved overnight, that will take years of effort and reform to significantly improve. But instant runoff voting is something that would make a major difference right away. I'm a big fan of instant runoff voting. I wish some jurisdictions have it. I think they might have it. I think they have it in San Francisco, maybe. There are a couple of cities, I think, that have it. It's a great idea. We should have it everywhere. I'm totally in favor of it. And if you don't know what instant runoff voting is, it's where instead of just voting for one candidate, you rank the candidates on the ballot. So the person you're voting for will be number one, and then your second choice would be number two, and then third choice, et cetera, et cetera. And then they count the number one votes. And if nobody wins a clear majority of the votes, in other words, if nobody gets over 50%, then they go back and they count the number two votes. And they repeat that process until one candidate has a clear majority of the votes, and then that's the candidate that wins the election, not the candidate with the most votes. So in other words, nobody would ever win anymore with 39% of the vote or 40% of the vote because there were two or three other people running and they ate up the votes. And you don't win by the largest plurality, you win by a majority. It's just not a majority of number one votes, but a majority of votes altogether. And I think it's a great idea. So I'm all for it. And if a socialist won a state in an election, what color would the state be on the map? I say let them have red and change the Republicans to yellow, or maybe like a baby shit brown, something that's more fitting for the character of the party. Not red, because red is a very striking, bold, proud color. Republicans don't deserve that shit. So yeah, if a socialist runs as a socialist and wins, then let the socialists have red. It's their color anyway. And give the Republicans a less flattering color because they're a garbage shitty party. So give them a garbage shitty color for the map. That's what I would do. Okay. Two more questions from the patrons, and then I promise I'll get to the live chat. The first one, the next one I should say, is from the Woken Cthulhu Hugh, aka Neo Normie Prophet. What's your favorite age of comics? Golden, silver, bronze, modern, or postmodern? And beyond the usual suspects, who are your favorite comic characters, i.e. Spider-Ham, Howard the Duck, US-1, Nth Man, The Punisher, Spider-Woman, Rom, Space Knight, The Haunted Tank, Animal Man, Gypsy Wild Dog, Batwoman, and Superboy. Okay. Well, my favorite age has changed as I have gotten older. I'm still kind of nostalgic for Bronze Age or Modern Age. Because that's what I grew up on. I grew up on the comics of the 80s and the 90s, and I still have a lot of nostalgia for those, obviously. But I think I would probably have to say Silver Age. I think my favorite era of superhero comics is the 50s and the 60s. And a little bit of the 70s when it was sort of transitioning from Silver Age to Modern Age. I love, especially like Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. I mean, that's, the early Spider-Man comics from 63, I think, when Spider-Man started. Was it 62 or 63? The early years of Spider-Man, where it was Lee and Ditko, and then it was Lee and John Romita as the creative team. Some of my favorite superhero comics ever are those early, the first 5 to 10 years of Spider-Man, I think, are just as good as it gets. And the Silver Age stuff for Superman and Batman is just so much fun. Totally different than the modern takes on the characters, but so much fun. So I would have to say Silver Age is probably my favorite. And favorite character other than the usual suspects, I got to say Nightwing. Nightwing has been one of my favorite characters for as long as I've known he was a character. I mean, when I got into comic books and I learned that, wow, so the first Robin grew up and left and he's not Robin anymore? Like, that doesn't, since when did they do that? Like, I just learned all of this in the late 80s and I was like, holy shit, he grew up and became his own guy and now he's a different guy and it's Nightwing. So I have to say Nightwing. I love Nightwing. Nightwing has been a component of many usernames of mine on the internet for many, many years. I love Nightwing. And last patron question from Joe McClory. If you could make one change to the election process or how elected officials are incentivized, what would you change? Well, that incentivized thing, I think it would have to be campaign finance reform. I think it would have to be that all elections are publicly funded. Private funding of elections would be illegal. All candidates would run their campaigns off of the same public fund, and everybody would get the same amount of money. I think it's the only fair way to do it in this day and age, where candidates can outraise each other, by billions and billions of dollars. I think it would be mandatory public funding of elections where each side gets the same amount of money, and very, very strict controls on outside groups being able to participate and run commercials and run ads and stuff. I think really, really radical, significant, extensive campaign finance reform would be what I would have to say if I could just change one thing. If I could change two things, instant runoff voting. Hello. Okay, let's check out the live chat. Sorry, everybody. I know the questions, the pre-submitted questions take longer and longer every time, but I really appreciate my patrons pre-submitting those. And, we've been going about 90 minutes the last couple of times anyway, so I know the hour is almost over, but we'll just go for a little while longer. And if you can't stick around until 90 minutes, that's fine. You can leave with no dishonor. But yeah, so how is everybody in the live chat? I apologize for neglecting you. Yes, Nightwing is awesome in Young Justice. I haven't seen a lot of Young Justice. I've seen a little bit of it, but yeah, Nightwing is awesome. And Nightwing was really good in, he was the only part that I really enjoyed about they did the movie of Under the Red Hood, where Neil Patrick Harris did Nightwing's voice. And I just thought the way Nightwing was voiced and the way Nightwing was animated was just beautiful. I wasn't a huge fan of that. And Bruce Greenwood did the voice of Batman in that, and I love Bruce Greenwood no matter what he does. So I like that. Overall, I didn't think that one was very good. But I liked the portrayal of Nightwing particularly. Oh, hi, Humbilly. Yeah. I hope I'll be okay too. I hope we'll all be okay, no matter how the election goes. I hope we'll all be okay. Um, Chris Mahoney in the live chat says, would the protest movements of today benefit from more centralized figureheads that most people could identify, or would embodying movements into a few human and flawed people cause more problems? I think it would help, but yeah, it would have the problem that you just described, whereas you're investing too much of the movement into one very fallible person, and if you discredit the leader, then you risk discrediting the movement. I think protest movements in general would benefit, and I'm not saying that they aren't doing this, because a lot of the major protest movements today, particularly Black Lives Matter, are doing this already. But the more involved and active they get politically, the more they encourage their members and their supporters to get involved in the political process, to vote, to run for office, to call their representatives, the more active they are in politics, the better. I think that was one of the reasons that Occupy Wall Street wasn't as effective in the long term as it should have been, or could have been, or as I wish it had been, is because it didn't translate to political action as much as it should have. So the choosing individual leaders that people can identify with and get behind, yeah, I mean, I think that would probably help, but I think most importantly is translating the protest to political action. Direct action is great, and direct action is important and necessary, but I think you have to have direct action, and you also have to encourage political action as well. And then there was another one too. Carlisle Cinephiles. Are you still planning on riffing the second Estes Perkle movie? Yes, I am. That is something that I put on the Patreon page as a goal, a fundraising goal that I met months ago. I think like back in February or March, I think. And yes, I do plan to do that at some point. I've been incredibly negligent with that. I haven't got it. I haven't even got it finished writing it yet. But yes, that is coming at some point. Tony Blakeway says, I don't have a question this time, but can I request you give Adi a belly rub afterwards? And said, yes, of course, I will give Adi a belly rub just for you. And just above that, I see Joe McClory say, favorite holodeck episode. Ooh, favorite holodeck episode. It would probably be a Deep Space Nine episode, I have to say. Even though there were some good holodeck episodes of Next Generation, it would probably be either Dr. Bashir, I presume, or Take Me Out to the Holosuite. And I think it would probably be Dr. Bashir, I presume. I love that episode. It's one of my favorite sort of offbeat, goofy Star Trek episodes. Because the goofy Star Trek episodes can often go in the other direction and just wind up being terrible. Because when Star Trek shows try to be funny on purpose, they don't always have the best track record. They're good at having comedy interwoven into the characters and into the episodes, but when they decide they're going to do a funny episode, sometimes it can be really, really terrible. But Dr. Bashir, I presume, I think that might be my favorite holodeck episode. Yeah. Okay, Nathan Dreeling. So I'm a decent human being, and since 45 was elected, how should one love their parents if they constantly watch Fox News and or support Donald Trump? They're your parents. If you want to continue to have a relationship with them, and that's something that you just have to put up with, then, I mean, I guess the best you could do is just say, look, can you just not bring it up while I'm around? Because if it were me and it was someone that I cared enough about that I would try to look past that, the only way I could do it would be to just say, you know what, I'm just going to have to ignore this while we're together. This, if it became something that they wanted to talk about all the time, or something that I just could not get past because I was constantly being reminded of it, I wouldn't be able to be around them, whether they were my family or not. I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, so it's tough. It's tough. And I sympathize with people who, it's like, oh, that's my mom. It's my dad. It's my grandparents. It's my, my best friend, my sister, my brother, whatever. You don't feel like you can just get rid of them or cut them out. You have a history. You have love. You have things that tie you to these people. You can't just say, fuck, or at least you don't feel like you can. You don't want to. But at the same time, it's like, Jesus Christ, how can they be on board with this horrible thing? It's tough. It's tough. I mean, and I don't know what to say. I just, if you can reach some kind of accord where you just say, look, I still want to see you. I want you in my life, but you can't be saying this shit while I'm around. You know, that's probably the best you can do. Yeah, like I say, if it was me and I couldn't get past it, I would say, you know what, I love you, but I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be around. You're not going to see me, which is terrible. But, you know, I'm like, nobody put a gun to your head and forced you to vote for Trump. You know what I mean? Aid Trance, in the new Picard series, would you like to see Picard still in command of the Enterprise E, in command of the Enterprise F as an admiral, or something completely different? I like the idea that he will no longer be a captain. I think, and I think that Patrick Stewart has hinted at that. He hasn't come right out and said that's going to be the show. But he has hinted that enough time has passed that Picard will no longer be a captain. I think that's good. I like the idea of Picard kind of being retired and sort of being dragged back into action by something, you know, being compelled to get back into it. You know, it's to sort of parallel what Patrick Stewart himself is doing. Patrick Stewart himself has long said, I'm done with Star Trek. You know, I'm grateful for it. I love that is, you know, on my resume, and I'm happy with the work I did, but I'm done. And now he's saying, you know what? I think I got one more run in me. I think I got to do this some more. It would be nice to see something parallel to that with Captain Picard, where maybe he has had a nice long career and he's left Starfleet, and circumstances now demand that he either go back to Starfleet, or if not go back to Starfleet officially, just involve himself once again in significant events. So something like that, I think, would be good. I don't think it would be a little silly to have him still on the bridge of an Enterprise after all these years. I mean, I know that the explanation for him never advancing in rank is, well, you know, Captain Kirk said, don't let them promote you, which, okay, fine. That might hold water for 3 movies, but we're saying now it's 20 years later and the dude is still the captain of the Enterprise. I don't know about that. Radical Bacon, fuck white terrorists. Am I right? You are right. You ain't never been righter. Samuel Sturgill, from one Star Trek fan to another, why are Trek fans made fun of as nerds who can't get chicks? Is it that big of a turnoff to women? Not to all women. There are lots of women who love Star Trek. And there are lots of women who love sci-fi and fantasy and that kind of thing in general. So no, it's a stereotype. I think it's a remnant from when sci-fi and fantasy and comic book nerds were a group with less cultural capital than they have now. You know, because I mean, yeah, like as Matthew says in the chat, a couple posts below that, you know, lots of couples meet each other because of a shared fandom, a shared Star Trek fandom, a shared what I mean. I was with a woman, my first long-term serious relationship. We were together for 2 years, and we met because we both were Batman fans. You know, so no, it's not a detriment for people meeting each other and having romantic relationships or even just hooking up. Like there's, you know, if you like it, someone else likes it. And if a large group of people like it, whether it's Star Trek or superheroes or whatever, it's likely that there will be people in that group who you are interested in and who will be interested in you back, who you could be with. Like, it's not a detriment at all. By the way, I've only seen 1 or 2 episodes of Black Mirror, so I don't have strong feelings on it one way or the other. I just haven't seen enough of it. Big Player Double A says, any thoughts on the band Rush? I'm not really a fan. I've never been into Rush. One of my best friends, actually, Varjak, the co-host of Christopher, the co-host of Pierre the Chef, one of my oldest and dearest friends. You're like a brother to me. Huge Rush fan. Huge Rush fan. I've never been into Rush. I like some of their songs. I can listen to it and go, okay, but I'm not like a huge fan at all. It's never reached out and grabbed me. So that's my thoughts. They seem like a good band. They've never reached out and grabbed me. Jason Houston, I'm really curious what you thought of the idea of the upcoming Star Trek Lower Decks animated series. It seems kind of similar to the podcast you work on. Yes and no. I mean, yes, in general, the concept is similar because our show, The Ensign's Log, deals with low-ranking officers. There is a lower decks, thing, like we're sort of the red shirts in the background while the episode is happening. So yeah, it's similar in that respect. But the little bit that I've read about the show, it doesn't strike me as though they are doing the same thing we're doing, except in a very general way. And also the other thing is, Ensign's Log is so closely tied to me and Jason's personalities. Like, if anybody else did the show, it would be a very different show, just because it is so defined and so directed by our own personalities, our own idiosyncrasies, things that we think are funny, things that we think each other think are funny. Like, it's you can't separate us from the show. So I'm not really worried about Lower Decks like ripping us off. I'm pretty sure that the people who make the show have not heard our show. Our show, even though a lot of people have listened to it, relatively speaking, especially since I started making Star Trek videos that got some views and people were hearing about it through that. I mean, it has gotten a lot more views in the last few months than it was getting before, and we're super, super excited about how popular it is. But it's not like a super popular podcast. It's not like it's getting millions of listens. So I'm pretty sure that the creators of the upcoming Lower Deck series are not taking ideas from us. But as I've said to a couple people who have reached out to me about this, if one of the characters sprouts a talking penis, then we'll know the fix is in. Oh, thank you, GoFem yourself. I guess I am kind of a geek. I'm glad people love me for it. And Radical Bacon says, "What if it's your spouse?" I guess like if like the Trump supporter is your spouse, or the loved one is your spouse. Look, I don't blame people for breaking up over it. I honestly don't. I mean, really, for me personally, like if I met someone who was like a hardcore, outspoken, dedicated right winger, I probably wouldn't go out with them in the first place, let alone get married and then have to face that kind of a choice. But if you're in that situation where you wake up one morning and you're like, oh my God, I married a Republican. I mean, I don't blame people for breaking up over that shit. That's like I was saying earlier, like politics matter. Politics aren't just some frivolous thing that don't count. They count. And your political beliefs and your political values say something about you. They contain information about what kind of a person you are. And if the kind of person you are, as indicated by your political choices, your political values, is the kind of person that your spouse doesn't want to be married to, they shouldn't have to stay married to you. And they shouldn't feel bad about ending the relationship. It's a compatibility issue. Oh, Joe says, while watching TOS, do you ever cast a background extra as Riker or Barclay? No, but I forget which episode it was. Jason told me during a recording session once, I can't remember which episode it was, but there was a background character who I think you don't even see their face. But it's a white dude, so it could be one of us. And he said, I toyed with the idea of saying that guy was, I can't remember if it was my character or his character, but that guy was one of us. And ultimately we didn't do that, but that's as close as we've ever come to saying, like, to saying, oh, you can spot us in the episode. I'm that guy there in the corner. We've never seriously thought about that. And I don't think that when I'm watching the episodes. I sort of assume that we are part of the crew that you just never see. For whatever reason, you'll never accidentally catch a glimpse of us walking through the corridor or working in the background or whatever. You'll never see us. Humbilly says, any issue with Ian McKellen joining Picard for a cameo? No, not at all. I would love it if Ian McKellen had a guest role in the new Star Trek series. That would be fantastic. Ian McKellen could play Captain Picard's best friend. Aw, that'd be great. Rod Pruitt asks, what is your favorite Trek ship model? It's close. My favorite Trek ship model, it's either the Defiant from Deep Space Nine or the movie refit version of the Enterprise that was introduced in Star Trek The Motion Picture, the refit version of the original Enterprise. And also the Enterprise A, because it's the same ship, basically. The classic movie series version of the Enterprise is, I just love that ship so much. It just looks so fantastic, and the interior, I love, and the interior, especially the bridge set of Star Trek 6, I just think is wonderful. So that, or the Defiant from Deep Space Nine, because I love the Defiant so much. Brave New Welt, is it responsible to make Soros jokes if the wrong people take it seriously? Could that spread anti-Semitic stereotypes? Yes, absolutely. And I don't think people should make Soros jokes in the current climate, because that has become so co-opted because it's become an anti-Semitic dog whistle. And I think we need to recognize that. And if you have a great George Soros joke, maybe just sit on it. Just don't tell the George Soros joke, knowing that that has been adopted by neo-Nazis and people who support neo-Nazis or parrot their talking points. And yeah, it's become an anti-Semitic dog whistle, so just don't do it. Daryl Letts, if you were still single, Steve, could you ever consider marrying a woman who was a fan of Britney Spears, Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, or Kim Kardashian, for example? Yeah, sure. Yeah, a matter of taste like that, I don't see a problem with. Ashleigh and I have very divergent tastes in a couple of aspects, you know. I don't think she's a fan of any of the artists you list in your question, but if she were, it wouldn't be an issue. No, not at all. I mean, look, she's not nearly as into the whole superhero thing as I am. It's never been a serious issue in our relationship. It's never, I mean, maybe it's made her want to divorce me, but it's never made me want to split up with her. And I don't think it's something like that, like a personal matter of taste, like the kind of music you like or the kind of, books you like or whatever. I don't think that would be like a major issue. But like a political ideology, like if someone is like a far right person or something like that, if they believe in things that I think are awful and harmful and perhaps even evil, sorry, I don't care how well we get along in other ways. I just couldn't do that. But liking music that I don't really care for, that's not a big deal. Big Player AA, where do you rank The City on the Edge of Forever within the other TOS episodes? Ooh, pretty high, actually, pretty high. I think my favorite TOS episode is probably Amok Time. I would rank City on the Edge of Forever maybe a notch or two below that. I think City on the Edge of Forever is a terrific episode. It's one of the best episodes of the series. I would rank it very, very highly. I put it right up there with Amok Time and Balance of Terror and Errand of Mercy and what are some other great TOS episodes? Devil in the Dark is a great one. Yeah, I would rank it very, very high. Yeah, it's a great episode. Ben Adams, do you find Voyager fans as annoying as I do? To answer your follow-up question, Ghastly. No, I have no problem with Voyager fans. I feel like I feel bad. I feel bad for Voyager fans who feel attacked when I take a dump on Voyager. Because there's nothing wrong with liking Voyager. There's nothing wrong with having Voyager as your favorite Star Trek show. Voyager is not that bad. I think it's the least of the Star Trek shows. I've said that before. I'll probably keep saying that until they make one that I don't like even less. But there's nothing wrong with being a Voyager fan. There's nothing wrong with liking Voyager. There's lots of stuff about Voyager that I like. I just don't think overall it's a very good show, and I think the cons outweigh the pros, and it doesn't work for me. It's just not to my taste. But I don't think that Voyager fans I don't find them annoying. I don't think they're terrible. And I understand why they might be a little sensitive if they see someone in a YouTube video just constantly taking a shit on Voyager. You know, I feel for them. Because I don't mean it. I don't want it to be mean. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want it. I don't want at least for my Star Trek stuff, like, I don't want my Star Trek stuff to be mean-spirited and nasty and negative and, you know, Voyager sucks. I hate Voyager. It's terrible. How could anybody like the show? Like, that's not how I feel, and that's not how I want to come across. So no, I don't have a problem with Voyager fans. I really don't. SC says, since people claim the Bourville, is the new Trek, is dog licking their balls now canon? Well, yes, absolutely it is. Do you buy into the Psycho Janeway theory about Voyager? Not really. I buy into the badly written theory about Voyager. I don't think Janeway is a psycho. I don't think that the show makes more sense if you assume that she's a psychopath. It's hard for me. See, it's hard for me to try to come up with like a fan theory to make the show make sense internally when I know the real reason the show is bad is because it was just poorly written. So I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the Psycho Janeway theory. I look at Janeway. I think Janeway is a very inconsistently portrayed character that Kate Mulgrew did as well with as any actor could possibly have done. That was just very inconsistently and terribly written. I'm hearing I'm hearing Robert Beltran in my head. From a Star Trek convention a few years ago. There was a panel discussion that somebody uploaded to YouTube where they had a bunch of the Voyager cast members, and Robert Beltran was there. And someone asked him, and Robert Beltran is just delightful to listen to him tell Voyager stories because he was not happy on the show. He does not like the show. And he makes no secret about the fact that he doesn't like the show and he didn't enjoy being on it. And when he tells Voyager stories, he tells them with such glee about, you know, he has a great time shitting on his old show, and it's delightful to watch. And there was a panel that I saw where he was asked, they were all asked, what was your favorite episode of Voyager? And Robert Beltran said, with this like shit-eating grin on his face, he said, well, I could never forget my favorite episode because my favorite episodes were always the ones that were very badly written. and he has such, and he got a laugh, like the audience, which I imagine was mostly Voyager fans for a Voyager centered panel. He got a laugh. You know, they weren't like, oh, come on, Robert, boo. You know, they had a giggle at hearing Chakotay take a huge dump on the show that he was on. So I think of that sometimes when I think about Voyager. It was just very badly written. Samuel Sturgill says, Steve, do you get, by the way, I skipped down to the bottom of the chat because I know I'm taking forever here. A couple people have said that they enjoy the Star Trek videos. They enjoy the Trek Actually video. Thank you, everybody. If you've just had nice things to say about me in the live chat, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Especially people who are new to the channel or who are coming because of the Star Trek videos. I love making those, and I'm so happy that a lot more people have come to the channel because of them. I think it's just wonderful. Samuel Sturgill said, Steve, do you get mad when conservatives call liberals pussies? You're not a pussy. Well, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't really get mad. I mean, I sort of roll my eyes. I think it's a silly, you know, it's like a schoolyard bully. It's like a schoolyard bully taunt. You know, liberals are pussies. Okay. You know, I don't have a problem. I have a problem when they use language like that to denigrate people, you know, because of their identity, because of their skin color or their gender identity or their country of origin, or, you know, if they use it to perpetuate racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia, like that pisses me off. But, you know, the sort of blanket like schoolyard taunts of, oh, liberals suck. Like, okay, well, have a nice life. I'm going to enjoy voting against you and working hard to make sure that people like you don't get to make decisions that affect other people's lives. I'll do that. You can stand there and call me a pussy if you want. I'm going to be working on this thing over here. So, yes, Radical Bacon, that's exactly right. She gets it exactly right. I'm not a pussy. I'm a sloppy mangina, and I have a shirt to that effect, which I don't know where it's at right now. I can't put it on at the moment, but yes, I have a sloppy mangina shirt. That is the correct term. That is the accurate term. Yes, Tom, that's right. I'm over 73,000 subs, which is due entirely, the recent jump in subs is due entirely to the Star Trek videos. And yes, not bad for a dying channel, is it? Not bad at all. Oh, yes, bad writing and Will Wheaton. Yeah, that's true. Wesley definitely was not very well served by the writing, especially in the first season, where I think a lot of the Wesley hatred is based on episodes from the first 2 seasons where Wesley was especially annoying. By the time he left the show, and what was it, season 4 when he left as a full-time character, he actually wasn't that bad. And looking back, I don't think he was really that bad. But yeah. SC says, "What do you think of the Discovery Enterprise? It takes tons of cues from the motion picture." Yeah, I thought the glimpse of it we got would look great. I thought it looked terrific. I'm looking forward to seeing more of it in season 2 of Discovery. I thought it looked terrific. Okay, I'm going to run through really quickly and answer some questions that were submitted as comments to the last episode, and then I'll come back and we'll do a lightning round, and then we will end this nightmare. So hold tight in the live chat for a couple more minutes and get some lightning round questions ready, perhaps, and then I'll be back shortly after I answer some pre-submitted questions, and we'll do a lightning round, and then everybody can go. Then you're all free to go. So here are some comments or some questions that were left as comments to the last episode of Ask Away. First is from the Ghost of Sabotage. A few questions. I recently finished watching Deep Space Nine, and maybe I'm alone here, but I liked it at the start, but after a point, it went downhill fast. I don't have a problem with religious stuff in sci-fi, but what I don't like is how Captain Sisko dropped science on a dime because some space balls of light told him to do so. What's your thoughts on this? As I type this, I woke up not too long ago on a Saturday after watching the VOD, and I have that stuffy, groggy feeling in the head when you oversleep, and no amount of tea or coffee if that's your poison. I just cannot shake this feeling off. Any suggestions? And if you had to take a shot of whiskey, gin, or vodka for every Donald Trump BS, which would you do? You can choose what brand of those drinks you want. Well, I would probably choose a shot of gin, and I would keep the gin bottle in the freezer for a couple of days so it was absolutely ice cold, because that's probably the best bet for me when it comes to the hard stuff. I have never been a huge drinker of hard liquor. The easiest to stomach in straight form to me has always been extremely cold, well-iced gin, so I would go with that. As for how do you shake off the groggies, if coffee doesn't work for you, I don't know what else to tell you, because coffee is my go-to thing. If that doesn't, I don't know, maybe like a cold shower, exercise, get up and take a walk, something like that, get the blood flowing. But yeah, I don't know if that doesn't work for you. And as for the Deep Space Nine thing, the Captain Sisko religious stuff doesn't bother me at all. I sort of read that as, well, in the Star Trek universe, the prophets, the wormhole aliens do really exist. And they are, I mean, the Bajarans couch it in very mystic religious terms, but the prophets are real, and they can do the things that the Bajarans believe they can do. And they have, as it turns out, had a very significant impact on Sisko's life. So I don't think it contradicts his commitment to science and to reason and to the facts in that scenario, because the prophets are actually real. And I don't think the show goes downhill. I mean, I don't think it becomes a bad show, but I do think the early seasons are really, really good. I am not one of the Deep Space Nine fans who thinks, well, you just have to suffer through it until Worf shows up and then it gets a lot better. Or, just suffer through the first 2 seasons, and then in the third season they get the Defiant and it gets a lot better. I think the first 2 seasons are actually really good. I think Deep Space Nine probably has the strongest first season of any Star Trek show, with the possible exception of the original series. And in terms of consistent episode quality, I might say Deep Space Nine is even better as a first season than the original series. I think it was a very, very strong show from the very beginning. And so I'm not someone who, I don't think it was bad at the beginning. I do think it was good from the start. I don't think it really significantly dropped off in quality. And in certain ways, I actually prefer the pre-Dominion War seasons. So I sort of agree with you, but I don't think that the religious stuff and the Cisco as the emissary of the prophet, that doesn't really bother me very much. I don't think that affected my enjoyment of the show at all. Corey Donaldson says, which of these songs, and then he lists all the songs in the world, At the 100th Meridian by the Tragically Hip, Vow by Garbage, Rain by The Cult, T-Shirt by The Beaches, Young Lust by Pink Floyd, We Live for Love by Pat Benatar, Baby Step Back by Gordon, Possession by Sarah McLachlan, Wheel in the Sky by Journey, Magic Man by Heart, Mystify by In Excess, Bloodletting by Concrete Blonde, If I Had a Rocket Launcher by Bruce Cockburn. Do you enjoy listening to the most? Of those songs on that list, Corey, I have to say, I really, really dig Possession by Sarah McLachlan. That's one of my favorite Sarah McLachlan songs. I just think that's a really, really great song. So I'm going to have to go with that one. I also really like, I like Magic Man by Heart. I'm a child of the 80s. I dig Heart. I think Heart's a cool band. But I think I'd have to go with the Sarah McLachlan song. I like that song. I like that song a lot. Let's see. And then there's one or two more questions from the comments. Or three. Okay, there are three more. Okay. Sir Kittalot says, hey, Steve, you say you're a fan of all animals. How about snakes? Yeah, I like snakes. I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because the last time I saw a snake in the wild, I about had a panic attack and charged away from it. And I was like, oh, God, a snake! But when I am my best self, yeah, I have no problem with snakes. I think snakes are fine, and snakes are kind of cool, actually. Ahoy Erno, with all these right-wingers missing the point of Star Trek, Doctor Who, My Little Pony, Space Turtle and Fireface, Sky Turtle and Fireface, thank you very much, and others, I was thinking about the inverse. What series or film, apart from He-Man, do you like despite its questionable stance on important issues? I like James Bond, even though it is soaked in toxic masculinity and drenched in neo-colonialism. James Bond is a good one. I've never been a huge Bond fan. I mean, I have a soft spot for Die Hard, at least the first three. The more recent ones I can sort of take or leave. They just seem like more generic action schlock. But the first Die Hard is awesome. The second Die Hard is not good, but is entertaining. The third Die Hard is better. Not as good as the first, but still, okay, pretty good. Can't go wrong with Jeremy Irons as the villain. I haven't really thought a whole lot about the politics of Die Hard. I imagine I would probably find some things there that I didn't really like. But yeah, I'd have to say the Die Hard series, at least the first half of it. And then there's a question from TJ Almighty who says, do you support hate speech laws in the USA like in the UK? Yeah, I think I do. I don't know. I'm not an expert on the UK hate speech laws, but what little I do know of them, I mean, as written, they seem reasonable. And as far as I know, most of the people who have been convicted based on hate speech laws, they seem to have mostly just been forced to pay a fine, or maybe if they've been forced to do community service, or if they have to do jail time, it's not like people are going to prison for 20 years because they broke the hate speech laws. So no, I don't have a problem with them at all. And if we had laws like that in the United States and they were executed responsibly and judiciously, as all laws ought to be, then I think it might actually do some good, and it would give people who are affected by hate speech some kind of recourse, which I think would be a good thing. I think it's possible to balance these things. I think it's possible to have a society that values free speech and free expression without having to say, and as far as speech, anything goes, or anything short of direct, immediate incitement goes. I think you can have a balance that takes into account a need, a desire to want to tamp down hate speech and discourage hate speech. And then I think this is the last pre-submitted question. Yes, it is. It's from Nobody Listens. Originally, I was going to ask you something fun. I had some ideas for questions about philosophy and media, but no, I feel like I have to ask about the really real stuff. Fascism has now risen or is on the rise in the US, Brazil, Hungary, even over here in Germany, where we tried so much not to have it happen again. Your country is probably the most far gone, since taking it back without a second revolution is nigh impossible thanks to all the gerrymandering and voter suppression. So what do? Do we start revolutions or do we die in the concentration camps? Since you're a white, able-bodied, cis-het man, you probably won't end up there, but lots of the people watching will. Should I join a party? Start riots? Pardon me. Or just wait until the fascists kill me so I won't have to commit suicide? If the choice we face is start a revolution or die in a concentration camp, then the answer is start a revolution. If the choice we face is start a revolution or watch millions of our fellow humans die in concentration camps, then I think the answer is start a revolution. If those are the only two options, then it's clear what we have to do. I don't think those are the only two options yet. I think we still have the ability to manifest change through the political system and through things that are adjacent to the political system, like protests, like direct action, short of revolutionary action. And I think we need to do that. But if we ever get to the point where it's fight or go to the camps, or fight or watch other people go to the camps, we have to fight. That's it. There is no choice. There is no choice. If you want to be the kind of person who either survives or can look at themselves in the mirror and have respect for the person looking back at them. I mean, you in that situation, you have to fight. You have to do something about it. You have to stand up to it. So yeah, if we are ever in that situation where those are the choices, where it's that stark, concentration camps or revolution, then let's start the revolution. I mean, I don't see any other reasonable response. Okay, so now that's the end of the pre-submitted questions. Everybody in the live chat, get your lightning round questions ready, because it is just about time for see, there you go. Anyway, so let's get our lightning round questions ready. I will put the timer up for 5 minutes, and because the show has gone on so goddamn god-awful long, I will try to stick to the 5 minutes and answer as many questions in the 5 minutes as I can, and then go off the air pretty soon after that. So let's get our lightning round questions ready, and here we go. 5 minutes starting now. Oh, I see Carlisle, the cinephile, say, did you and Ashleigh do anything special for Halloween? Halloween is also our wedding anniversary. So we had a little horror movie marathon. We watched a couple of Dracula movies. We also watched a Dracula movie yesterday. So we did some special things. We took a nice long walk. It was nice. We didn't hand out candy. We didn't participate in trick or treat, but we did do some other things. Radical Bacon says, it's fountain pen day. How much do you not care? I don't care at all, okay? Because I have a NASA pen. I have a space pen, all right? It's the kind of pen that astronauts carry. It's better than a fountain pen. What happened to your voice, the lightning round? Did you not hear it? I played the lightning round intro. The lightning round. Joe McClory, favorite bad episode of Trek. Oh, God, favorite bad episode. Spock's brain. Spock's brain is awesomely bad. Threshold is bad and is fun to watch, because if you know what you're getting into with Threshold, if you know how terrible it is, and you're like, let's just watch this and tear it apart, so much fun to watch. True Southern sweet tea or instant coffee? I gotta go with the sweet tea. I'm not a big fan of instant coffee. I mean, maybe it's better now, but when I last had it in like my early 20s, I was not a fan of instant coffee at all. Tony Blakeway, can you give us some info about the replacement to An Atheist Reads yet? I kind of don't want to. I want it to be a surprise. I will say it is a revival of a video series that I did a long time ago. I'm bringing something back that I used to do and doing it in a new and different way. I'll just say that. Nobody listens. Any lesser known sci-fi fantasy novels you'd recommend, especially those that aren't part of a bigger universe like Star Wars? Not really. I can't say that I have very many I can recommend. My favorite is probably Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, but that's pretty well known. A lot of people know that, but I love that novel, or novella, I guess. Humbilly, about liking Die Hard, have you seen Nostalgia Critic's review of Sandra Bullock and Stallone's movie Demolition Man? It's on point and shows that as time moves on, it makes more sense. No, I don't think I've ever watched anything by Nostalgia Critic, to be honest. I think I might have watched the review of Man of Steel he did with Angry Joe, but I think that's the only video of either of them that I have ever seen. Eric Sermon, have you seen Contra's new video? Yes, I'm glad somebody asked. I watched it right before I went on the air for this. In fact, Radical Bacon and I were talking about that in the chat before the stream went live. Yes, I had just finished watching it at about half an hour before the show started. Yes, and I thought it was good. I thought it was very good. Contra, she's a genius. She's an artist. I mean, just visually, just the amount of work and the amount of thought and effort that goes into her videos, just in terms of cinematography. Who else can you talk about cinematography when you're talking about YouTube videos? She's fantastic, and I really enjoyed the new video. I, as a cishet white guy, really enjoyed the new video. I don't know if a trans person would have a different reaction to it. I'll have to wait and see what other people's takes are on it to see if, because sometimes that happens. I'll watch a video and then other people who know more than I do or have a different experience than I do will point things out that I didn't notice. And I'll think, oh, actually, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that is a little problematic. But just from my own perspective as me and what I already know, what I bring to the video, I thought it was excellent. I thought it was really, really good. Nobody heard the lightning round sound. That's too bad. I wonder why that was. Well, anyway, I played it, so I don't know what happened. The lightning round. Daryl Lett says, referencing my favorite Facepalm 5 episode, your faves are sex creeps too. Did it surprise you that some of these men would turn out to be sex creepy? Yeah, it did. It did. It probably shouldn't have. Like in the case of Louis C.K., it probably shouldn't have, considering how much he talks about jerking off in his comedy. I should have thought, like, actually, it's not surprising at all. The dude talks about jerking off a lot. But yes, it did surprise me. Ketchup or mayo? Mayo. Hard cider? No. Just regular old soft grocery store purchased apple cider. Joe McClure, do you think the way the Federation is shown in DS9 is because the Federation has changed since TNG, or that the crew of the Enterprise are just looking at it through rose-tinted glasses? I think that part of Deep Space Nine is that the Deep Space Nine is a different place. They're having to deal with different issues than people in the more cushy part of the Federation. So I think that's part of it. Okay, time is up. I'll say one more. The next question was Aid Trance, who's saying your favorite brand of lager. I don't really have one right now. Up until a couple years ago, it was... I don't even remember. Jesus Christ. I don't even remember what my favorite brand of lager used to be. I have had hard cider before, yes. Hard cider is, depending on the brand, it can be really good. Yuengling. I had to fucking Google it. My favorite brand of lager used to be Yuengling, but I swore off of it. Yes, Radical Bacon, you were there ahead of me. Yes, it was Yuengling. I should have just waited in the live chat for someone to tell me what my favorite beer was. It used to be Yuengling. And yes, I agree. Philosophy Tube's recent videos have been influenced a lot by ContraPoints. And yes, I think you could talk meaningfully about the cinematography of his recent videos as well. It used to be Yuengling. I swore off Yuengling because the owner of Yuengling endorsed Trump, and fuck that. The same reason I swore off WWE. But it used to be Yuengling. Now I don't really have one because I don't really drink enough beer to have one. I only drink beer socially. And I don't drink beer every time I hang out with people. It's just if we're out somewhere and people are drinking, I'll have a beer, but I haven't had beer in the house for God, years. So I don't really have a favorite, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, whatever. Yeah, I know, Tony. I totally blanked on it. Yuengling used to be my go-to beer. I totally blanked on it. Anyway, I'm going to call this to a conclusion. Thanks everybody so much for joining me for this, for sticking it out for over an hour and a half. I appreciate it. Most people stuck around for the whole thing. To everybody in the live chat. And I want to remind everybody who is watching, just in case you don't know, in addition to doing YouTube stuff, I also am on 2 podcasts, 2 excellent, wonderful podcasts. And they're excellent and wonderful because of Jason, not because of me. But I do my best. I try to carry my end of things. But they are both created and hosted by the great Jason Harding. And he lets me be on the shows too, which I think is very kind of him. And one of them is a movie review podcast called Late Seating, which we just had the new episode go up last week, which was our review of The Thing. We also do the Ensign's Log, which is a Star Trek themed comedy podcast, and the new episode of that went up today. And our new episode of the Ensign's Log takes place at the same time as the classic Star Trek episode Space Seed, and it's a really fun episode. So check that out. You can listen to the Ensign's Logs, and you can listen to Late Seating and all of the other podcasts that Jason does at letmelistenpodcast.com, and I really, really wish you would. And you can also subscribe to our podcast via the RSS feeds that I have linked in the description of the video if you want to just listen to them through your favorite podcast app. And also, I could not do this without my Patreon patrons, many of whom are here in the live chat. Thank you all so much for being patrons. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to support my YouTube channel with a monthly donation. And if you become a patron at any level, you get to ask questions for these live streams ahead of time, and I make sure to always answer all of the pre-submitted patron questions at the very beginning of the show, even if it takes me a fucking hour, which it did today. Probably my own fault for not being pithy enough in my answers. So thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks to everybody for your support, whether you're a patron or whether you just like to watch this stuff for whatever reason, whether you're here for the Star Trek videos or the political stuff or Steven stuff or whatever, or all of it or none of it. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time.